Hello, and welcome to the Conservative Christian Commentator. I'm your host, Mycroft, and I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in. This video is not scripted, so I apologize in advance if it is a little less structured than usual. First, a couple of housekeeping notes. One, I have decided that I'm just not going to edit these. I don't seem to have the ability to edit these at the moment. A friend of mine offered to edit them, and I seem to be unable to upload them correctly to Dropbox. My phone just will not cooperate no matter what I do, so I'm just going to follow God's word and just do it and just get it out onto the internet. And secondly, I apologize for the inconsistent white balance. I'm doing my best to make sure it's consistent, but I know that over the first 3 videos it was wildly inconsistent. So I do apologize for that. I hope that it will not be a problem in the future, but if it does, please cut me some slack. So, with housekeeping notes out of the way, I want to talk about some recent events that I've been thinking about. And this is, for those of you who are wondering about what this is, the information will be in the title, but this is regarding President Trump, President Biden, and the upcoming election. Now, I really hope I'm wrong about this. I would love to be wrong about this, but the more I've thought about it and the more I've prayed about it, the more sure I am that someone needs to say something. As of recording this, President Trump has survived an attempted assassination. President Biden has just dropped out of the race and endorsed Kamala Harris for the next presidential nominee for the Democratic Party. The Democratic National Convention has not taken place. The Republican National Convention has taken place. President Trump is now the official nominee, and his running mate is Senator J.D. Vance. I'm not tremendously up on everything, but that is the current events as of recording this video. I don't know when this video will be posted, hopefully within a week or so of this recording. So, here's what I've been thinking. The 2020 election has been highly contested by many people, and I believe rightfully so. And before you announce me an election denier, let me posit to you these facts. We're going to put aside what people have been talking about, where there was video footage of election personnel putting the same ballots through the machines 3 times to be counted, and then those same people being congratulated by Biden on preserving election integrity. And then we're also going to put aside the fact that they stopped the counting in the middle, and then after the counting was resumed, mysteriously several million more votes for Biden materialized. We're going to put those suspicious factors aside because there's, as far as I know, no concrete proof that your average person will accept, because the mainstream media and a lot of other places are slandering all of that as misinformation, misspoke, and we're going to put all of that aside. We're going to talk about something that all of us have seen. The social media censorship of the 2020 election alone was enough to influence the 2020 election. Great example, the Hunter Biden laptop. Millions and millions of people who were interviewed have said that if the Hunter Biden laptop story had been verified as true, which it was, during the election they would have voted differently. But during the election, the Hunter Biden laptop story was suppressed. It was labeled Russian disinformation. It was labeled a campaign. I'm so tired of the term disinformation, by the way. But it was labeled a propaganda campaign, and it was labeled a million other things, and yet it turned out to be true. And also, I believe very firmly that a lot of the other social media censorship came together. Anything pro right wing was completely just axed off media, and a lot of right wing YouTubers lost of a lot of subscribers, a lot of traction, and so yeah, it's really not popular to be right wing right now. According to the other side, right wing is pro slavery, essentially, pro hating women, and I haven't found that to be true. I lean right wing myself, which is why the channel is called Conservative Christian Commentator. But I mean, I don't find myself hating women. Women are wonderful. They're amazing and frankly essential. And so are men. Men are wonderful and amazing and essential. But to get back on point, those social media censorship campaigns that were run by Alphabet Corporation, that were run by Facebook, which has now become Meta, and that they were run by every single other platform. Those massive companies did influence the outcome of the election. And they all influenced the outcome of the election for one particular side, the side that claims to be anti-establishment. So while I very much hope that I'm wrong about this, I do think that we're kidding ourselves if we believe that President Trump will just win this election against President Biden's nominee, which is current Vice President Kamala Harris. I don't think that the anti-Trump rhetoric has stopped in any way, shape, or form, and the people who are anti-Trump, some of them have moved on to greener pastures, but a lot of the news hosts and a lot of the same executives are still in place who absolutely hate Trump with every fiber of their being. And so that same exact anti-Trump campaign is just going to happen all over again in the 2024 election. I do not think that President Trump will be declared the winner of the 2024 election. I do not think that anyone will buy that, given the current popular uprising that channels like CNN would rather that you ignore. But I don't think that the same people who messed with the 2020 election via the news cycle are going to stop messing with the 2024 election just because some people on the right caught on. Many people on the left still do not even realize how much the 2020 election was messed with. So I don't think that it's very reasonable to just assume that President Trump is going to win. And I don't think that it's wise to rest on our laurels just because he survived an assassination attempt and is now riding on a wave of popularity due to that assassination attempt. That wave will not last, and I don't think he's going to be declared the winner. Whether he will actually win is very much up for debate and very much up for interpretation, and I'm not going to call it because I don't think that will be wise for me to say. But the fact remains that I have seen a lot of people on the right-wing side of media start to rejoice that the election is a fait accompli, and it's not. I don't think that we should regard it as one, and I think that regarding it as a fait accompli is only setting ourselves up for disappointment. Because remember, people regarded the 2020 election as a fait accompli. And And for a moment, for the sake of argument, let's presume that the 2020 election was messed with directly through creating false voters and through creating ballots, and let's assume that's true for the moment. Just for the sake of argument, bear with me. If you don't believe it, that's fine. If you do believe it, that's also fine, but let's just assume that it's true for the sake of argument. If that's true, then that argument of the same people who messed with the election previously are going to do the same thing again it holds up even more so. So if you believe that the previous election was messed with during the vote counting, then why would you believe that you should have faith in that same cycle to be full of integrity this second time around? So a lot of the same people who I've seen who are talking about how the election cycle was disrupted in 2020 are now talking about how Trump is going to win 2024. And I don't think that's very wise. And I don't think that's realistic to realize. So I would like to point out that if you do believe that the election cycle was messed with, and I know there's a lot of evidence for that, but I'm not going to say one way or another what I believe. But I will say that if you believe that the 2020 election cycle was messed with, then you cannot say that the 2024 election is a fait accompli, because that same system is still in place. The managerial class, as Vivek puts it. As far as my personal opinions go, I'm not a fan of Trump. I think he's a little bit on the rude and the crass side, based on what I've seen of him, even in right-wing media. And I don't think that he behaves like someone that I would want to vote for behaves. But nonetheless, his actions speak louder than his words, and his actions resulted in $2 gas prices, and his administration, that wasn't him specifically, but that was his administration and his policies that resulted in the $2 gas prices. I see a lot of people saying, yeah, the president isn't directly responsible for gas prices. Come on. We're not talking just about the president, we're talking about the entire administration. And that's just something that I personally can point to in my own life as, I'd like that back. So, even just for $2 gas prices, I would vote for President Trump. I also happen to believe that President Biden and his administration, and the same administration which is going to be running under Kamala Harris, is harmful to our country and is divisive to our country. And the same people who want to destroy America are the people behind that administration. And so I do not believe that I'll be voting for them. So it doesn't really matter what I personally think of Trump. What matters is that I think one person will be good for the country and another person will be bad for the country. And again, this is just my opinion. But I don't believe that if I dislike the person who I think will be good for the country, or if I like the person who will be bad for the country, that should impact how I vote. And I don't believe that who you like or dislike should impact how you vote either. I think that you should vote based off of who you think will be good for the country. Because sometimes medicine tastes bad. Cough medicine certainly does. When I had a cough, I took a bunch of cough medicine, and it made me want to throw up. But it stopped me from coughing. There's enough right there. President Trump is a bit brash and a bit rude. But as far as I can tell, he gets the job done. I didn't find out until after the 2020 election had already happened and well into Biden's presidency that President Trump had actually brokered peace in the Middle East. And I only really found out about it when that peace in the Middle East broke up under President Biden's administration. and the U.S. has a lot of influence over there. So there is not really any. There's factors outside of our control, but there's a lot of factors that are within our control that directly contributed to the current conflict. And I'll speak more on the current conflict in another video. The synopsis is that I don't really know everything about that conflict, and so I want to be very cautious about what side I want to take. So I'll leave that for a different video until I've done more research. But I think that it's important to realize that when Trump runs in 2024, this assassination attempt was not the end. Never will be, never has been. There is evidence to suggest that there were 2 shooters, possibly 3. There is no confirmation as of yet of for sure that we know that there was 2 shooters, but I personally believe that there were 2 shooters just based off of the audio analysis. I believe it's possible there were 3, but also the fact that people tried to point him out to law enforcement, the shooter that we know about. People tried to point him out to law enforcement, and law enforcement was playing down like, oh, I can't see anything. And then the interesting testimonies by the head of the Secret Service of, well, the roof was too steep, so we didn't want to put anyone on there, and it's like almost level. And then it was outside our perimeter. It's 160 meters away from the main podium. What do you mean it was outside your perimeter? It's a big event. And then the very fact that it was allowed to happen speaks to corruption that is directly designed to be infiltrated. And so I think that if you believe that the assassination attempt means that it's now over for the other side, and it's now over for the left, then you're very much wrong. And I hope to God that I am wrong. I hope to God that this is everything, because I would not wish more assassination attempts or more issues. I'm not going to say much more than that, but I would not wish any more of the treatment that President Trump's been getting on anybody. Not even someone who I directly hated, which I don't believe I directly hate anybody. But that's not some kind of thing that I would wish on someone just because I disagreed with them. And I do find it disturbing that there's multiple sections of the internet that are raging not because a presidential nominee was just shot at, but are raging because the shooter missed. And that, if you don't really understand the level of truth decay that is going on in our generation, that should show you the level of truth decay that is occurring in our generation. And it should be very sobering to look at that and realize that there are people who have been so deceived that they believe that even an assassination attempt is okay, and would cheer on a successful assassination attempt. So I think that it's very important to realize that there are massive forces that are out there that are willing to do anything to stop President Trump, and have demonstrated that they're willing to do anything to stop President Trump, because this 20-year-old mysteriously knew that President Trump's security would be really, really depleted at this particular show. And he had a lot of insider information that would allow him to know the exact spot, that was the exact hole that the Secret Service had in their perimeter. And he knew exactly when to climb the roof. He knew exactly when to fly his drone. He knew exactly where to park his van, where to ride his bike to. He knew exactly where he would not be stopped. So he had way too much information for me to believe that he was acting alone. So I want to point out that it's very unlikely that this was just a lone shooter like the news would like you to believe. The very fact that this 20-year-old who was just out of high school was very much able to do what he was able to do is very telling that there are people out there who really want to see President Trump dead. And to think that somehow that was the last of it is not it's not setting ourselves up for success, and it's not setting anybody up for it's setting all of us up for failure. And I would much rather be the one who thinks that there is a lot more that's going to happen to President Trump and be wrong and think that there's nothing more and actually nothing more happens than be someone who thinks that nothing more is going to happen and then be shocked when something else does happen. I believe that it's very reasonable to expect something else to happen, and I hope, as God is my witness, that nothing else does happen. But I think it's very important for us to realize that this was not the last of it. This assassination attempt will always be marked down as the start. This is just showing how desperate the people who are opposing Trump are in trying to take him out. And they're beginning to show their hand. But they have not shown their entire hand yet. So I do not think that this will be the last that we will hear of what happens to President Trump. And I pray to God for his safety, and I pray to God for the safety of everyone involved in his team. And I pray for President Biden's safety as he finishes out his term, and I pray for Kamala Harris's safety as she runs, because it doesn't matter what side you're on, none of this political violence should be permitted. We should not be assassinating our political opponents, no matter what side of the aisle we are, and we should be standing united as a country against that. To which point I find it highly interesting that immediately after the assassination attempt, a lot of the mainstream news media, like CNN, like MSNBC, like ABC, immediately jumped to the response rhetoric from the right is horrible. We need to be sure that the right is not going to retaliate against someone on the left. And that focus on the immediate response shows a couple of things. One, it shows that a large portion of the machine that attempted to execute President Trump, which speaks through the news media, is worried about a retaliation, as it rightfully should be. And number two, that same news media, which is determined, that same news media is straight up determined to lay everything at the feet of the Republican Party, which isn't particularly wise because it kind of shows your hand. And if you're willing to lay everything at the feet of the opposition, then you're just somebody with no agency. So I don't think that the same people who were willing to make an assassination attempt are going to just stop at one failed assassination attempt. I think there are forces that are regrouping right now that will make another move. And I hope and pray for everyone's safety, because no one should be killed in this election. No one should be shot at. This election should be fair and peaceful. And I pray for nothing more than an election that is fair and peaceful and uninterrupted by any tampering. But I do worry that tampering will take place, and I think that we're kidding ourselves if we do not have that same worry that tampering will take place, and we do not guard against that, because it's very important to guard against tampering while hoping and praying that it does not take place. Prepare for the worst, pray for the best. So, my prayers go out to everyone in this election on both sides, sincerely, that they would stay safe and that God's hand of protection would be on them, because regardless of who you're supporting, our leaders need protection from the forces that would tear them down. And whether or not we like a leader, if the forces that would tear him down while he's in office or while he's running for office, then that impacts the whole country. And even if they tear him down after he leaves office, that still impacts our whole country. So we should pray for our leaders, whether or not we agree with them, among other things, because the Bible says so, because the Bible says that God appoints leaders, and that God is the one who's in control. So we need to pray for the well-being of our leaders. So with that being said, I do pray for the well-being of President Biden. I do pray for the well-being of President Trump. Pray for the well-being of presumptive of vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance. Pray for the health of Vice President Kamala Harris. And I do pray that this election will go smoothly and fairly. But I think we're kidding ourselves if we believe that we can just take that for granted. And I am concerned by the large amount of rejoicing that I see going on, as if we had already won this election on the side of President Trump, when nothing could be further from the truth. This is not the end of the fight. This is just the beginning. The end of the fight is after the winner is announced in late November, early December. And I don't think that it will be President Trump, at least initially. I do think that if this does happen, that if what I believe is going to happen does come to pass, that it will throw a large portion of the country into disarray. And I think we need to pray that civil war does not break out, because it's, at this point, with how divided the country is, it is a distinct possibility. And that is not something that is good. That's not something that will leave this country better. There are not a lot of upsides to a civil war. There's a whole lot of downsides, though. So we need to pray that whatever does happen, that we address it with unity, and that we realize that the forces that are tearing our country apart are not our countrymen, but the forces that are tearing our country apart are the machine. So pray for our country, because it has never needed it. It has never needed it like it will need it now. And this election will be very interesting. But I don't think it'll be interesting in a good way. And I think we need to be on guard against the forces that tear this country apart. Because when one party is standing for division, all it takes for civil war is for the other party to stand for division as well. Currently, the left, as it were, so to speak, is standing for division. And so that means that the only way to truly oppose the forces that are standing for division is to stand for unity. And to say it doesn't matter what your party allegiances are, it matters that you're American, and that you live here, and you share the same desire for our country to do well that we do. And we want to extend the olive branch to everyone, because it's not ours to determine who is fit to live and who is not. Just the same as it's not theirs to determine who is fit to live and who is not. So we need to be the party that stands for unity, and not the party that stands for screwing over our opponents, because that's the easy, predictable response. But the hard unpredictable response is to pray for your enemies. And yet that's the Christian response. That's the thing that we're called to do. So I think it's really important for us to go into this next election prayerfully, thoughtfully, and doing as much as we can the will of God and standing on the side of humanity and not on the side of division. Because the thing that is the most anti-human is the thing that divides us. The devil is the one who stands for division, and the devil is the most anti-human of all, because the devil hates God, and by extension, the devil hates God's creation. So we need to realize that by standing for unity, we're standing with God. And it doesn't matter who the next president will be, because the next president could be Mickey Mouse. But that doesn't change one important and one very key thing. Whether the next president is President Harris, President Trump, President Biden, or as I think it will be, President Clinton or President Michelle Obama, it does not change the fact that God is still on the throne, and that He is still Lord of our life, and that if we follow His will, He will make sure that we receive our eternal reward. It does not matter what this flesh goes through, and that's easy to say during times of peace, but now, during times of spiritual warfare, is when the application of that comes. It does not matter what happens to this flesh. What happens to this stuff is immaterial. What matters is that we store up treasure in heaven, and that we do the will of God on this earth. So, whether you're right or left, and you're watching this video, I implore you to follow the powers that are higher than the principalities of this world, and realize that whoever is president, whoever takes power, God is still in control, and God is the one who dishes out the eternal reward, which is the most important reward of all. Thank you very much for watching.